The Galactic Council ruled with an iron grip, its influence spanning countless star systems. A coalition of the most advanced civilizations, it had forged its empire over millennia, guided by the belief that order could only be maintained through overwhelming strength. At the heart of this dominance lay the indestructible fleet, vast starships bristling with weapons, shielded by impenetrable armor, and powered by technology incomprehensible to most species. To challenge the Council was to court annihilation. For generations, no one had dared. High Chancellor Atralian stood on the command deck of the flagship Eminence, gazing at the vast expanse of the galaxy projected before him. His robe shimmered, woven with threads of starlight, a symbol of his unmatched authority. Around him, advisors and officers bustled, their movements precise, their voices hushed. Yet, despite the aura of control, a rare tension had crept into the room. Our scouts report anomalous signals originating from the fringes of the Orion Arm. Intoned First Advisor Keldrix, his voice a low hum. Primitive but persistent. A species broadcasting their existence without understanding the risks. Atralian turned, his sharp, multifaceted eyes narrowing. Humans, he said, almost disdainfully. A species confined to a single planet, their technology barely capable of interstellar communication. And yet, they announced themselves like children shouting into a storm. Their recklessness could draw attention, Keldrix added. Pirates, renegades. Others who might upset the Council's balance. Atralian waved a hand dismissively. Then we shall deal with them as we always have. Demonstration and domination. Send a fleet. Let their leaders kneel before us. Or let their ashes serve as a warning to others. On the other side of the galaxy, Earth was oblivious to the decision that had sealed its fate. In a command bunker buried beneath the Nevada desert, Major Alex Hartman adjusted his headset, his sharp blue eyes scanning rows of monitors. The room buzzed with activity as radar operators tracked an unusual disturbance in the upper atmosphere. Data poured in, but none of it made sense. "What are we looking at?" Hartman asked, his voice steady but edged with curiosity. A young technician glanced up. "We're picking up reflections off something. Too big for satellites. Too fast for anything we've seen before." Hartman frowned. "Get me the regional commander." And someone patched this to NORAD. As the technician scrambled to comply, Hartman leaned back, his mind racing. Years of experience told him that this was no ordinary anomaly. His gut churned, not with fear, but with a gnawing anticipation. Whatever was out there wasn't human. Above Earth's atmosphere, the first of the Galactic Council's ships emerged from hyperspace, the fabric of reality rippling as the enormous vessels materialized. They were silent predators, their hulls absorbing light and radar alike. They hung in the void like gods, unchallenged and unchallengeable. On board the Herald, Commander Dravix observed the planet below with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. Primitive ecosystems, fossil fuels. They barely qualify as sentient, he sneered. An officer at a nearby console reported, orbital scans show limited defense systems. Their most advanced technology appears to be chemical propulsion and rudimentary projectile weaponry. Dravix smirked. It will be a short campaign. Prepare the broadcast. Minutes later, every screen, radio, and communication channel on Earth went dark before being replaced by an alien visage. High Chancellor Atralian's holographic projection loomed, his voice resonating with unearthly authority. "People of Earth," he began, "you stand at the edge of greatness. The Galactic Council offers you an opportunity to join our order, to become a part of a legacy that has endured for eons. Surrender unconditionally, and you will be granted mercy. Resist, and your extinction will serve as a lesson to others." The broadcast ended as abruptly as it began, leaving the world in stunned silence. In Hartman's bunker, the tension was palpable. "What the hell do we do now?" muttered one of the junior officers. Hartman stood, his expression grim. "We fight." The room fell silent, every eye on him. "Get every anti-air battery operational," he barked. Scramble fighters, alert the missile defense systems, and tell the brass we're going to need every weapon they can spare. We've trained for this. Maybe not against aliens, but we've trained. They think we're weak. Let's prove them wrong. Even as Earth scrambled to prepare, the Galactic Council's fleet descended, their ships blotting out the sun over major cities. Their intent was not just to conquer, but to demonstrate their supremacy. Yet for all their confidence, they underestimated one crucial factor: the resilience of humanity. In the Council's war chamber aboard the Eminence, a Trallian watched the first stages of the operation unfold. Cities crumbled beneath precise bombardments. Human defenses crumbled as expected. Yet, amidst the chaos, he detected something strange, a resistance that refused to die quietly. "Curious," he murmured. "These humans, they do not flee as others have." Keldrix, standing nearby, replied, "Perhaps they lack the intelligence to recognize their futility." A Trallian's gaze lingered on the planet. Or perhaps they are something else entirely. As the first day of the invasion drew to a close, the Galactic Council's fleet stood poised for total domination. Yet in the shadowed corners of Earth's bunkers and command centers, men like Alex Hartman were beginning to understand their enemy and prepare a response that would change the galaxy forever. The first wave struck just before dawn. Across the globe, cities were roused from their slumber by the bone-shaking hum of alien ships cutting through the atmosphere. They appeared without warning, vast and shimmering, their alien geometry defying earthly logic. Panic spread like wildfire as people poured into the streets, staring skyward in mute horror. The invasion had begun. Major Alex Hartman stood in the operations center of Nevada's top-secret defense installation, watching as the world unraveled in real time. Satellite feeds displayed eerie, silent images of cities consumed by fire, their defenses crumbling under precision strikes from the Galactic Council's fleet. A digital map of Earth flickered on the main screen, showing red zones spreading like a virus. "Status report," Hartman barked, his tone cutting through the chaos in the room. A lieutenant turned to him, his face pale. "Major, their ships are targeting critical infrastructure, communication hubs, power plants, military installations. Everything's being wiped out. We're trying to coordinate a response, but they're jamming most of our systems." Hartman's jaw tightened. "And our weapons?" The room fell silent. Finally, a younger officer spoke, his voice hesitant. "Missiles are useless. Fighter jets can't even get close before they're shot down. It's like nothing can touch them." For a moment, Hartman said nothing, his mind racing. He glanced at the live feed from Washington, where President Holt was addressing the nation. The broadcast was shaky, the signal barely holding under the strain of interference. "This is not the end," the president's voice echoed faintly. "Humanity has faced impossible odds before. We will resist. We will endure." Hartman turned away, his focus narrowing to the task at hand. If humanity had any chance, it lay in finding a weakness in their enemy. He refused to believe in the concept of indestructibility. Above, the alien fleet moved with clinical precision. Commander Dravix, aboard the Herald, observed the operation with detached satisfaction. The human resistance was feeble, disorganized, a predictable display from a species so primitive. "Target the Northern Hemisphere's missile silos next," he ordered. "Neutralize their ability to counterstrike entirely." "Yes, Commander," a subordinate replied. Dravix allowed himself a rare moment of pride. Another planet subdued. Another victory for the Council. But deep in his core, there was a faint flicker of unease. The human's defiance, while futile, was different from what he had seen in other campaigns. Most species crumbled at the first sign of overwhelming power. Yet here, scattered across the planet, small pockets of resistance were already forming. Back on Earth, Hartman's team scrambled to establish a defensive perimeter. The installation's anti-aircraft systems were the most advanced in the region, but even they seemed laughably inadequate against the alien ships. Still, Hartman refused to retreat into despair. "Patch me into the base commander," he ordered, motioning to a nearby operator. Moments later, the grainy image of General Marcus Steele appeared on a nearby screen. "Major," Steele said without preamble, "I need a status update." "We're holding, sir," Hartman replied, though the words felt like a lie. "But it won't last. Their ships are impervious to everything we throw at them." Steele's expression hardened. "Understood. We've got researchers at Wright-Patterson working on something that might help. An experimental targeting system. I'll have the specs sent to you. In the meantime, keep your men alive." "Yes, sir," Hartman replied. The screen went dark, leaving him with a flicker of hope. Experimental technology. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. As the day wore on, the Council's ships continued their assault, but cracks began to form in their flawless execution. A small group of fighter pilots out of Nellis Air Force Base managed to exploit a gap in their formation, drawing fire long enough for ground forces to evacuate civilians from Las Vegas. In the jungles of South America, guerrilla fighters launched hit-and-run attacks on alien patrols, using their knowledge of the terrain to evade capture. And in Nevada, Hartman's team received the schematics for the experimental targeting system. "This is unconventional," muttered Sergeant Willis, Hartman's second-in-command, as he studied the plans. "Looks like it's designed to emit some kind of high-frequency pulse." "Will it work?" Hartman asked, scanning the room. Willis shrugged. "Hell if I know. But at this point, what do we have to lose?" Hartman nodded. "Get it operational. I want test results within the hour." As his team worked, Hartman stepped outside the bunker for a moment, the desert air cool against his face. Above, the faint glow of alien ships hung like stars in the daylight sky. He clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. These invaders saw Earth as nothing more than a target, a stepping stone in their endless conquest. But Hartman had spent his life fighting for the idea that humanity was worth more than the sum of its flaws. He wasn't about to let that belief die. Inside the bunker, a sudden burst of static on the monitors drew Hartman's attention. One of the operators turned wide-eyed. "Major, we've got something. The new system. It's interfering with their shielding." Hartman moved quickly, his voice sharp. "Show me." The screen displayed a playback of a test run. The modified anti-aircraft weapon fired, releasing a pulse that rippled through the air. A nearby alien scout ship shimmered, its shield flickering before collapsing entirely. Moments later, the ship disintegrated under a barrage of conventional missiles. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Hartman grinned. "We've got a chance." Word spread quickly, and soon other bases across the country were adapting the new technology. The tide of the invasion had not yet turned, but for the first time, humanity had a weapon that could strike back. On board the Herald, Dravix reviewed reports of the human counterattacks with growing frustration. "Impossible," he muttered. "Their weapons cannot penetrate our defenses. They appear to have developed a new system." One of his officers replied, "A crude but effective modification." Dravix's eyes darkened. He had underestimated these humans. That would not happen again. "Inform the fleet," he said coldly. "No mercy. Destroy them all." Back on Earth, Hartman stood before his men, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and determination. "This isn't over," he told them. "Not by a long shot. But we've shown them we're not as weak as they thought. Now, we fight for every inch of ground, every life, every second. Let's make them regret ever thinking they could take this planet." As cheers erupted around him, Hartman allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. The war was far from won, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a foregone conclusion. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the barren Nevada desert as Major Alex Hartman surveyed the assembled troops. Dust clung to every surface, a gritty reminder of the relentless pace they'd been forced to maintain since the invasion began. Overhead, the sky remained an ominous canvas, streaked with the unnatural glow of alien ships that loomed just beyond sight, watching, waiting. Hartman tightened his grip on the binoculars, scanning the horizon. The modified anti-aircraft batteries stood in silent readiness, their sleek barrels pointed skyward. Engineers and technicians worked feverishly to calibrate the targeting systems, their faces etched with exhaustion but determined. It had been 3 days since the new technology was deployed, and for the first time, they had seen cracks in the enemy's indomitable facade. "Major," Sergeant Willis called, jogging up with a tablet in hand. "The latest scans are in. We've confirmed it. Their shields are definitely vulnerable to sustained pulses at the frequency we're using. It's not just the scout ships. We've got a shot at taking down one of the big ones." Hartman turned, his gaze sharpening. "How long before we can engage?" Willis hesitated. "If everything works perfectly, an hour. Maybe less. But there's still a lot that can go wrong." Hartman nodded, his jaw tightening. "There always is." The radio crackled to life, and Hartman moved to the command console. General Marcus Steele's voice came through, clipped and urgent. "Major, intelligence confirms a Council dreadnought is moving toward your position. It's heavily shielded, but this is your best chance to test the system at scale. If you can bring it down, we might finally shift the momentum of this war." "Understood, sir," Hartman replied. "We'll be ready." Steele's voice softened just slightly. "I know what's at stake here, Alex. But if it looks like a losing fight, don't throw lives away. We need you alive for the long game." Hartman's lips pressed into a thin line. "I appreciate the concern, sir, but we're not in this to play defense." The transmission ended, and Hartman exhaled slowly, turning back to the preparations. He found himself staring at the battered photograph tucked into the corner of his console, a snapshot of his father, a retired airman who'd spent his life teaching Alex the value of strategy and sacrifice. The weight of those lessons pressed heavily on him now. Above them, the first sign of the dreadnought appeared as a faint distortion in the sky, like heat waves rising from the desert. Within moments, it resolved into a hulking silhouette, a ship so massive it seemed to defy the laws of physics. Its hull shimmered with the eerie light of its shields, a visual reminder of its supposed invincibility. "Contact incoming," a voice called out from the radar station. "All units, stand by," Hartman ordered, his voice calm despite the surge of adrenaline coursing through him. "We only get one shot at this." The ground shook as the dreadnought descended, its presence overwhelming. Smaller alien ships flanked it, darting in intricate patterns like predators circling their prey. Hartman's hands clenched behind his back as he watched the spectacle, every instinct screaming at him to act, to strike, but the timing had to be perfect. "Pulse generators online," Willis reported. "Targeting locked." Hartman nodded. "Fire." The first pulse erupted from the modified anti-aircraft battery, an invisible wave that rippled through the air. For a moment, nothing happened, and then the dreadnought's shield shimmered, flickering like a mirage under pressure. A second pulse followed, then a third, each one driving deeper into the alien defenses. The smaller ships broke formation, their movements erratic as they scrambled to protect the larger vessel. "Shields destabilizing," someone shouted. Hartman stepped closer to the console, his voice cutting through the noise. "Focus all fire on that dreadnought. Don't let up." Missiles roared skyward, their trails streaking against the dusk. The alien ship's shields pulsed violently, and then, with a deafening crack, they collapsed entirely. For the first time, the full vulnerability of the Galactic Council's fleet was laid bare. "Direct hit," Willis exclaimed as one of the missiles struck the dreadnought's hull, a massive explosion tearing through its side. Secondary blasts followed as the ship's internal systems failed catastrophically. Cheers erupted from the soldiers around Hartman, but he remained focused. "Stay sharp," he barked. "This isn't over yet." The smaller alien ships regrouped, their movements desperate but coordinated. They began targeting the ground batteries, unleashing a barrage of energy weapons that scorched the earth. Hartman watched as one of the batteries exploded, a plume of fire and smoke rising into the sky. Battery 3 is down, an operator called. Redirect fire from the remaining units, Hartman ordered. And someone get those engineers moving. Every second counts. The dreadnought, now crippled, listed in the sky, its immense bulk threatening to collapse under its own weight. Hartman felt a surge of grim satisfaction as it began to descend, trailing smoke and debris. The Invincible had been brought low. On board the Galactic Council's flagship Eminence, High Chancellor Atralian watched the destruction unfold with icy rage. Explain, he demanded, his multifaceted eyes fixed on the holographic display. First Advisor Keldrix hesitated, his usual composure fraying. It appears the humans have developed a weapon capable of disrupting our shields. The mechanism is crude but effective. Atralian's voice dropped, cold and menacing. And how long before this crude mechanism spreads to the rest of their forces? We cannot say, Keldrix admitted. Their ingenuity appears to outpace our projections. Atralian turned back to the display, his expression unreadable. Then we must act swiftly. Send reinforcements to their position. Crush them before they can rally. Back on Earth, the battered remnants of the dreadnought slammed into the desert, shaking the ground with the force of an earthquake. Hartman braced himself against the console as the shockwave rippled through the bunker. When the dust settled, he allowed himself a small, tight smile. Status, he asked, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Willis grinned, his face streaked with sweat and grime. We did it, Major. That thing's down for good. Hartman nodded, but his expression remained guarded. Good work, everyone. But this was just one battle. They'll come back harder next time. He turned to the room, his gaze sweeping over the tired but determined faces of his team. Make no mistake, this was a turning point. We've shown them they can bleed. Now, we show them we don't quit. As the cheers broke out again, Hartman glanced at the horizon, where the first stars were beginning to appear. For the first time since the invasion began, they had more than just hope. They had proof that humanity could fight back and win. The battlefield was silent, save for the crackle of flames licking the sky. The wreckage of alien ships, once pristine and imposing, now lay scattered across the Nevada desert like the bones of a fallen giant. Dust mingled with smoke, painting the horizon in muted shades of orange and gray. Major Alex Hartman stood amidst the chaos, his eyes scanning the remnants of the Galactic Council's forces. The war was not over, but for the first time, victory felt within reach. Reports coming in from the European front, sir, Sergeant Willis said, jogging up with a tablet. His face was streaked with dirt, but his eyes held a flicker of hope. They've taken out another dreadnought. That's 3 in the last 24 hours. Hartman nodded, his jaw tight. And casualties? Willis hesitated. Heavy but manageable. Civilians are evacuating zones faster, now that we've disrupted their orbital dominance. Hartman's gaze drifted skyward, where the Council's remaining ships hovered, still formidable despite the losses. Their attacks had grown more erratic in recent hours, as if the invaders themselves were struggling to adjust to humanity's unexpected resilience. Any word from command? Hartman asked. Willis handed him the tablet. General Steele's on the line. Wants to talk next steps. Hartman took the device and stepped away from the noise of the camp. General Steele's weathered face appeared on the screen, his expression a mixture of relief and grim determination. Major, Steele began, his voice steady. Congratulations on the Nevada operation. Your team's success has inspired forces worldwide. The Council's fleets are retreating in some sectors, but they're regrouping near major population centers. We need to press the advantage. What's our next target, sir? Hartman asked. Their command ship. Steele replied without hesitation. We've pinpointed its location over the Pacific. If we take it down, we sever their coordination and force them into disarray. You'll lead the assault. Hartman nodded, the weight of the assignment settling on his shoulders. Understood, sir. Alex, Steele said, his tone softening. You've done more than anyone could have asked. But this mission, it's a long shot. You need to be prepared for what happens if it doesn't go our way. Hartman's expression hardened. With respect, sir, failure isn't an option. The general's face flickered as the connection cut off. Hartman returned to the camp, where his men were already preparing for the next fight. The air buzzed with a quiet urgency, every movement purposeful, every conversation brief. Hours later, the strike team was airborne, flying low over the Pacific in stealth-modified jets. The ocean stretched endlessly below, a mirror reflecting the stars. Hartman sat in the cockpit of the lead plane, his hands steady on the controls. We're approaching the target. Willis's voice crackled over the comms. Hartman adjusted his visor, his gaze narrowing. Ahead, the Council's command ship loomed, an enormous construct of blackened metal and glowing energy. It dwarfed the dreadnoughts, its very presence radiating power. Remember the plan? Hartman said. Pulse generators first, then missile strikes. We take out the command ship, or we don't come back. The team acknowledged, their voices firm despite the tension. As they drew closer, the ship's defense systems came online, filling the air with streaks of alien weaponry. Hartman weaved through the chaos, his plane shuddering with each near miss. Pulse generators fire now, he commanded. The modified systems activated, releasing synchronized bursts of energy. The command ship's shields reacted violently, flickering and sparking under the assault. Hartman watched as the once impenetrable barrier began to falter. It's working, Willis called. Keep it up. Missiles followed, striking the exposed hull with precision. Explosions rippled across the surface of the ship, each one carving deeper into its structure. But the alien vessel fought back, its weapons tearing through the strike force. One by one, Hartman's planes went down, their pilots' last transmissions filled with static and defiance. Stay on target, Hartman shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. His own jet took a hit, alarms blaring as smoke filled the cockpit. He ignored the warning lights, focusing solely on the ship ahead. Finally, with a deafening roar, the command ship began to break apart. A chain reaction of explosions tore through its core, sending fragments spiraling into the ocean below. Hartman's jet, crippled but still airborne, veered away from the blast zone. Sir, it's going down. Willis's voice came through, filled with a mixture of triumph and disbelief. Hartman exhaled, his grip loosening on the controls. Mission accomplished. All units, fall back. The command ship's destruction sent shockwaves through the Council's remaining forces. Without centralized coordination, their attacks grew chaotic, their retreat haphazard. Across the globe, humanity's forces seized the moment, pushing the invaders back system by system. Days later, in the ruins of a once bustling city, Hartman stood before a crowd of soldiers and civilians. The air was heavy with the scent of ash and hope, the scars of battle still fresh. We've done the impossible, Hartman said, his voice carrying over the quiet. We faced an enemy that thought us weak, thought us insignificant, and we showed them the strength of humanity, not just in our weapons, but in our unity, our resilience. This victory belongs to all of us. The crowd erupted into cheers, but Hartman's expression remained somber. The cost of victory weighed heavily on him. Friends lost, cities destroyed, lives forever changed. He turned away, his gaze shifting to the horizon. Somewhere out there, the Council still existed, wounded but not defeated. Humanity's survival had been secured, but the galaxy had grown far larger and far more dangerous. In the weeks that followed, Earth began to rebuild. Governments worked to restore order. Scientists studied the remnants of alien technology, and soldiers like Hartman prepared for the challenges ahead. The war had ended, but a new era had begun, one where humanity was no longer alone in the cosmos. Hartman stood on a quiet hillside one evening, watching the stars. The photograph of his father rested in his pocket, a silent reminder of the sacrifices made and the values upheld. He took a deep breath, the weight of the future pressing against him. "We're still here," he murmured to the sky, "and we're not going anywhere